All right, so um, you've really outdone yourself this time with all this productivity stuff, huh? Excerpts from this strategic mindset book by was it Thibaut Meurisse?
Yeah, Ep Meurisse.
Right, and a peek into his dopamine detox too. It looks like we're going to be supercharged after this deep dive.
Definitely. And what I found really interesting is how Meurisse connects planning, effectiveness, even like brain chemistry,
Yeah, it's not just about getting things done,
right.
right?
It's about doing the right things. And
Mhm.
he argues that it's like crucial to understand how our minds work to do that.
So it's not about just being busy, it's more strategic.
Exactly. He calls it strategic productivity, basically, aligning your actions with your long-term vision.
Okay, I like that. So instead of just getting caught up in the daily grind, you're thinking about where you want to be a year, 5 years, even 10 years from now.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we do that? How do we bridge the gap between like where we are now and that vision?
Well, Maurice has a system for planning your year. And he suggests starting by like visualizing yourself a year from now.
Hmm.
Imagine you're looking back and describing all the stuff you achieved. What would make you the proudest? What would make this year really valuable?
I love that it's like almost a time travel exercise for your goals.
Right.
But what if the thing that makes me the most proud is also the thing that scares me the most?
That's actually a good sign. Maurice says that often the thing we fear most, that's the very thing we need to tackle head on.
Face your fears, huh?
Yeah, they often hold the key to like our biggest breakthroughs.
Okay, so I've identified this big, maybe kind of scary goal.
Mhm.
What's next?
Now we got to get strategic about how we approach it. Maurice distinguishes between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is about doing the right things.
So, like, I can be super efficient at answering emails, but if those emails aren't moving me towards my goal, then it's not really effective.
Exactly.
So how do we even know which tasks are the right ones to focus on?
Well, he has the 7-step method, and he says you start by really clearly defining the desired outcome of any task.
Right.
What are you trying to achieve? And then ask, is this task even necessary?
Oh, so sometimes we're just doing things because they've always been done that way.
Exactly. Sometimes we just got to question that.
All right, so step one, question if the task is essential. What's step two?
Step 2 is figuring out the absolute minimum effort needed to achieve the desired outcome.
Hmm.
We often overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
Marissa encourages us to ask, what's the simplest, most straightforward way to get this done?
I like that. Straightforward. So it's not about doing the most, it's about doing just enough.
Right.
Oh.
He's a big fan of the 80-20 principle.
Focusing on that 20% effort that gets you 80% of the results, that's smart. I could see how that could change like my whole to-do list. It's not just about getting things done, but getting the right things done in the most effective way. What else does Meurisse recommend?
Well, he's big on like systems and processes, automating or at least streamlining those repetitive tasks.
Like what?
Like, could you create a template for a report you write all the time? Or could you batch similar tasks together so you're not constantly switching gears?
Oh, that's a good idea. So you're freeing up your mental energy for the important stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, so steps 1 and 2 are about questioning the need for the task and then figuring out the minimum effort. Step 3 is about streamlining and automating where possible,
Yeah.
seeing how this 7-step method could really boost productivity. What about the other steps?
Well, steps 4 through 7 get into delegating, prioritizing, scheduling, and reflecting.
Okay.
It's a whole system for approaching your work strategically.
So Maurice really emphasizes being in control, being the CEO of your own day, huh?
Yeah, making those conscious choices about how you spend your time and energy.
I love that. The CEO of your own day. It seems like this method is all about shifting from like a reactive mindset to a more proactive one, being intentional instead of letting the day just happen to you.
Precisely. And this shift in mindset is a big part of another aspect of Meuris's work, the power of asking yourself the right questions.
Okay.
He says we need to go from, why is this happening to me, to how can I make this happen for me?
That's a big shift in perspective. You go from like feeling like a victim to taking control. It
Exactly.
reminds me of those times when you're stuck on a problem and then you ask yourself a different question and boom, the solution appears.
Exactly. And Meurisse actually gives you a ton of these thought-provoking questions in his book, like, what would this look like if it were easy? Or what's the biggest obstacle and how can I overcome it?
So it's about getting creative and finding solutions instead of dwelling on the problems.
Right.
switching from a complaining mindset to a problem-solving mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of getting bogged down in the why, you focus on the how.
Yeah.
This is really resonating with me. What else does Meurisse say about this?
He argues that asking these kind of questions helps you uncover like hidden assumptions you have.
Yeah.
And also helps you see those potential roadblocks in advance.
So you can prepare for them.
Yeah. For example, if you're struggling to reach a goal, asking yourself, what's the real reason I'm not making progress? That might reveal a limiting belief you have.
Oh, interesting. Or maybe some fear you got to address.
Yeah.
So we've got strategic productivity, the 7-step method, and now this idea of asking powerful questions. That's a lot. Does Meurisse talk about how we can actually take in all this info and use it effectively?
He does. He actually warns against overlearning.
Overlearning.
Yeah, it's when you get caught up in consuming information but don't actually put it into practice. He also warns about analysis paralysis.
Overthinking everything and never taking action.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, knowledge is power, but only if you use it.
Exactly. Meurisse highlights that it's super important to find the right information, not just consume everything you can.
Be more selective.
Yeah. He says you need to figure out your learning goals.
Okay.
Why do you need to learn this thing? And what's the desired outcome?
So it's not about learning for the sake of learning. It's more strategic. You got to have a purpose for it.
Right. You got to know how you're going to apply it. Yeah. And you know what's interesting? Meurisse connects all this back to our brain chemistry.
Oh, right. In that dopamine detox excerpt.
Exactly. In dopamine detox.
It's a hot topic these days. I know I felt that pull,
Yeah.
I should be working, but I'm scrolling through social media instead.
Yeah.
How does Meurisse deal with that?
Well, he explains how dopamine, it's essential for motivation, right? But it can kind of backfire in our modern world.
How so?
We're constantly bombarded with stimulation notifications, news feeds, all designed to trigger those dopamine hits.
So our brains get hooked on those quick bursts, making it harder to focus on the stuff that doesn't give us that instant reward.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of a dopamine detox comes in. It's not about getting rid of dopamine completely.
Right, that wouldn't make sense.
It's more like resetting your dopamine sensitivity. So you can actually find satisfaction in deeper, more meaningful things.
So you're not chasing that quick hit all the time.
Right.
Okay, so how do we actually do this reset? Any specific steps?
He does lay out some steps. First, you got to identify your personal dopamine triggers.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's those activities or apps that just suck you in mindlessly,
Like for a lot of people, it's social media, video games.
Yeah.
Even just constantly checking email.
Exactly.
So it's about recognizing those patterns, like when you reach for your phone without even thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Once you know your triggers, then you got to consciously reduce or eliminate them, at least for a little while.
That sounds tough.
It can be.
Yeah.
It might mean turning off notifications, deleting apps, or setting time limits.
That's the real challenge, isn't it? It's one thing to be aware of the problem, but actually changing those habits, that's hard.
It is. But he says the benefits are worth it.
Yeah, but
He suggests finding other activities that give you that sense of accomplishment, Things like reading, exercising, being in nature, even creative hobbies.
So replacing those quick hits of dopamine with activities that have a deeper payoff.
Exactly. And he also talks about managing your energy throughout the day.
Oh, interesting. How does that tie in?
Well, it's all about being strategic with your time and attention. Remember, Meurisse suggests figuring out your peak hours, those times when you're most alert and focused.
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely a morning person.
Right. So use those peak hours for your most important work.
Makes sense. But then what about those inevitable energy slumps? Everyone has those, right?
Oh, yeah. He's big on taking breaks. Even short ones. Let your brain recharge. And he also emphasizes alternating between, intense focus and relaxation.
Oh, so your brain can process stuff in the background.
Yeah, exactly. It can lead to new insights, too.
It's like when you're struggling with a problem and the answer just pops into your head when you're taking a shower or something.
Exactly. And speaking of letting your mind work strategically, he also recommends actually scheduling in some thinking time each week.
Thinking time? What does that look like?
No distractions, just you and your big ideas. It's about taking that time to reflect on your goals, brainstorm solutions, maybe consider different perspectives.
So you're creating the space for those aha moments.
Exactly. In our busy world, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and never step back to look at the big picture.
That's so true. So we've got the dopamine detox, managing our energy, and now this thinking time. It's all very holistic, isn't it? It's not just some productivity hack. It's more about working with your mind, right? creating an environment where you can thrive.
Exactly. Maurice's approach really is about being the architect of your own life. You design your days, your environment to support what you want to achieve.
Which makes me think back to those powerful questions he talks about. It's not just about tackling specific tasks. It's like shaping your whole direction in life, right?
Absolutely. He talks about asking yourself, what do I really want to achieve? What kind of impact do I want to have? What legacy do I want to leave behind?
Big questions.
Yeah, but they help you define your purpose, stay motivated.
It's not just about getting things done. It's figuring out what's actually worth doing. And then, of course, using these tools and techniques to make it happen.
Precisely. It's aligning your actions with your values, your aspirations. True productivity isn't about being busy. It's about being effective, making your efforts count for something.
That brings us back to strategic productivity, doing the right things, and being intentional with your time and energy.
Absolutely. Making those conscious choices about how you spend your days, what you focus on. It's, like you said, being the strategic architect of your own life.
And finding those right dominoes, the key actions that make the biggest impact.
And sometimes that involves learning new skills.
Right, but again, Mira says, it's got to be strategic.
Exactly.
So how do you decide what's worth your time? And he talks about those meta skills.
Yeah,
direction.
meta skills. Those are like the foundation. They can be applied to so many areas of your life.
Like what?
Like learning how to learn effectively, or how to communicate well, how to manage your time.
Stuff that can help you in any situation.
Exactly. He also talks about identifying those skills that are like bottlenecks, holding you back, you know?
So sometimes you got to focus on your weaknesses
Yeah.
if they're preventing you from reaching your goals.
Yeah, it can be really valuable.
But he also says you don't have to be an expert in everything, right?
Right. Figure out what level you need for it to be useful for you.
Like, I don't need to be a concert pianist to enjoy playing for myself.
Exactly. Be realistic, be strategic. And then once you've identified those key skills, it's all about putting in the work, building those habits.
And that's where that dopamine detox comes back in.
Exactly. Manage your energy, your attention, so you can focus on what matters.
It's about finding the willpower to do those tough but important things.
Exactly. It's all about making those strategic choices, what you do and how you do it, that ultimately get you where you want to go.
So it seems like Marissa's whole approach is about taking control, right? Understanding how you're wired, managing your energy, and being intentional about, creating an environment that actually supports your goals.
Yeah, it really is. And he emphasizes that it's not just a one-time thing, you know?
It's not like you figure it out and you're done.
Exactly. It's a process, it's ongoing, like experimenting and refining.
So being adaptable, paying attention to what works, what doesn't, and making adjustments along the way.
Exactly. It's like you become a student of your own productivity.
You get to know yourself better.
Right. You figure out your strengths, weaknesses, tendencies.
So it's not about finding some magical formula that works for everyone. It's more personalized.
Yeah, it's about developing that self-awareness and then using it to create your own unique approach.
And that self-awareness also helps with those tough choices.
Totally. Saying no to distractions, focusing on what really matters, staying focused on the long game.
It all circles back to that idea of being the strategic architect of your own life.
It is. It's a powerful idea. And it reminds us that, we have a lot more control over our lives than we often think.
More than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah. We can't control everything that happens, but we can control how we react, how we prioritize things, where we choose to put our energy.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into all things Meurisse, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
I'd say it's the importance of making sure your actions align with your values, with your aspirations.
So it's not just about being productive. It's about being productive in a way that's meaningful to you.
Exactly. It's about creating a life that feels, fulfilling. And I think that's a great place to leave it. If you really want to make a change, stop trying to do it all and focus on just a couple of key skills this year, what kind of impact could that have?